Ephesians chapter 6, we'll open there tonight. Ephesians chapter 6, where we'll be. We've kind of had 2 weeks somewhat of introduction, not necessarily so because the messages were there, but to get to where I was trying to get is where we're going to look at tonight. But I do want to read these few verses leading up to that as we get started there in verse 10. Paul says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore," he says in verse 14, "having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness." And this is where we'll stop tonight and be looking together at verse 14. A few things that we'll notice tonight out of verse 14 as he gets into this first part, or application, if you will, of the armor of God. He gets into verse 14 and makes that statement, "Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having the breastplate of righteousness." First thing that I want you to think of is this first word in verse 14, where he says stand. It's very obvious that the wording that Paul is using is preparing for military engagement. And what Paul says to us there in verse 14, when he leads off telling us to stand, as he says therefore, what does he mean when he says therefore? What do we always say? Look back and see what he's talking about. Having read verse 10 through verse 12, and not to repeat that again, he's talking about the deceitful trickery, the wiles of the devil. Having understood now those things, having understood that we have an enemy tonight who is after us, who does everything he can to distract us, to set us up so that he can knock us down. Knowing right well that we serve a God tonight that gives us the ability to have victory over him, even though there is an enemy tonight who seeks to devour us, he says, now that we know that, let us stand. And when you think about standing, especially pertaining to the text tonight, the first thing that I want you to think about tonight is this is the posture of the victor. I don't know if you've ever seen different fights or boxing matches or things like that, but one of the most prolific pictures of any boxer there ever was Rocky Marciano standing over a man that he had just knocked out. And I got my buddy, his grandpa gave him a picture of that, and it is a cool picture, and he even signed it. He's got an autograph of Rocky Marciano that signed that, man. It was just unbelievable, the picture. That was the pose or the posture of the victor. The posture of the victor, standing, being able to stand in front of our enemy, being able to stand in spite of our enemy. And a few things as pertaining to this posture of the victor, being able to stand. One, it shows our readiness to oppose the enemy. Anybody that's ever engaged in anything, I don't care if it's a military affair, if it's an actual fight, if it's a wrestling match, a boxing match, or even a football game, you don't go into that on your back or on your seat. If you engage on your feet. Having done all to stand, he says, let us stand, and let's stand therefore to oppose the enemy. It pictures our readiness to oppose the enemy. It also pictures our eagerness to advance our cause. We can't go forward on our back. You got to get up and in standing so that we can advance the cause of the Lord Jesus Christ in order to go forward. This is the posture of victory. This is the posture of those who seek to win. Posture of those who believe that they've already got the victory in their grasp. Goes on and tells us now also our confidence in our preparation. And that's where we're going to dig in for just a little while tonight, if you'll let me do so. Being able to stand shows that we have in standing a readiness to oppose the enemy, an eagerness to advance the cause, and a confidence in the preparation that got us to this place. Now, I believe tonight you would all agree with me that God does not want us to go into anything half-hearted. God does not want us to go into anything unprepared. I saw a thing today that this was the last Sunday of the year that there won't be football. They start preseason football next week, and then it'll go from now till the first or second week there of February. There'll be football on your TV, and I don't know how you feel about that. I am excited. But all those guys, they didn't clock out in February and go to Hollis's, right? And eat and sleep and be merry. They've been working. They've been working to prepare themselves. What I love, and I've said this all my life as a Saints fan, of course in 2009 it worked out for me. But since then, it's kind of been the same. We're all undefeated right now, right? And so there's great anticipation. And the anticipation is that no matter how sorry you were last year, if you prepare hard enough and you work hard enough, you might be good this year. And the reality is, and what we're talking about tonight, is having confidence in our preparation. If you go into, like we talked about several times, about boxing matches or about any kind of thing like that, every guy that goes into that goes in thinking he can win. And the reason he does is because he's worked to prepare himself. And that's how we should go out into the world tonight as the people of God. In order to do what God's called us to do, we should be so confident in what we've set out to do, and the confidence that we have is only going to come through consistent preparation. And when he speaks of this armor, he's speaking of our ability to prepare ourselves for this battle or for this fight. So he tells us to stand. Stand therefore, as he says in verse 14, having our loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness. Now, where the standing speaks of the posture of the victor, the girding of the loins speaks, second of all, of the protecting of our vulnerability. The protecting of our vulnerability. This is the covering of the midsection. This is the weak spot. If you want to build strength, you build strength from your core. You can have the strongest upper body in the world, but if you can't get off the ground, right? Jessica tells me all the time, because I have had lower back issues, that it's from toting this bag of corn over my belt buckle. Right? So what do to keep your back strong? You strengthen your core. If your core is weak, it don't matter how strong you are in your ankles, it don't matter how strong you are in your shoulders. If you don't have the midsection to support it, you're in trouble. And when he talks about girding our loins about with truth, he's talking about strengthening the core. He's talking about protecting that in which we are most vulnerable. Because you break something down from the middle. You take it down right there. They teach you in football. You don't hit them low, you break their knees. You hit them high, you knock them out. You take them around, you hit them once in the air and once on the ground. That's what they taught us. You wrap them up, get them to the floor. And so when you're looking at this, you think about having our loins girt about, being strengthened and being prepared in the places that we're most vulnerable. Now the spiritual application is that we all have vulnerability. We all have places that we're weak. We all have places that we are soft. What do we do in order to strengthen those places? We girt them about with truth. We bind them with truth so that they can be stronger, so that they can be covered in truth, so that they can be bound in its covering. You bind this thing down. You put this on with strength. You don't put this on loose and you don't prepare it lightly. This is the foundation of everything you're about to put on before that. If this is not properly put on, if this is not properly applied, properly prepared, then you're setting yourself up for vulnerability. This, if you will, is the foundation of the armor, especially pertaining to the text, since that's the first thing that he gives us. You don't build a house from the roof down, you build it from the ground up. You go to the most vulnerable place. You can build a mansion, but if the foundation's flawed, you're going to have trouble. It don't matter what we do tonight, if we don't start where we're supposed to start, on the inside, on the core, in the very beginning of the foundation of who we are, and protect ourselves from vulnerability, we will not have anything to build on. This is the cover of the center or the base of the foundation. You build lasting strength in that area. That's what you do. Biblically, this is to protect us. Biblically, this is to keep us in a place where we don't have to worry about those vulnerable places. What's interesting about a belt, which is where you would fasten on this loin cloth, or rather to girt your loins, when you bind this belt, you don't wear a belt that's made of light material unless it's decorative. And in this day and time, you didn't wear decorative belts. Now you got belts made out of seashells and everything under the sun. This is not a decorative belt. This is a belt that serves a purpose. You don't wear a belt that's made lightly, and you do not wear that belt loosely, right? Anybody like me that's ever had to wear a belt out of necessity knows. You don't wear it loosely. You have to tighten that baby down. The tightest thing I've got on right now is my belt. Because it's what holds all this pretty together, right? It's what keeps everything in place. This is the binding. You talk about a belt, you talk about this girding of the loin, he's talking about covering ourselves with truth. That's our foundation. What's our foundation? The truth. If we want to be effective in this fight, we have to be bound with truth in our most vulnerable places. We have to have the truth bound so tightly and so firm-fittingly in our heart and in our most vulnerable places so that we can go out and fight. I had a preacher one time. His name was Bishop Fred A. Caldwell of the Green Acres Full Gospel Southern Baptist Church of the Assembly. I don't remember what it was called, but they had a television program for their preaching, and the name of the church was so long it took 2 lines to put it on there. Bishop Fred A. Caldwell. He owned the radio station that I worked for whenever, or his church did, on the radio station I worked for whenever I took the church there at Pilgrim's Rest in 2005. And I remember when I talked to him throughout the time, he was a great man. When I talked to him several times, he would give me little nuggets of advice. And funny, of all the great preachers and all the great men I've talked to, some of the best advice I was ever given was given to me by Bishop Fred A. Caldwell. You've heard me say some of this before. It was Fred A. Caldwell that told me to be a lion in the pulpit and a lamb on the ground. It was Fred A. Caldwell that told me to take what the Word says and say it. That's what he told me. Bishop Fred A. Caldwell. When you're talking about the truth and being bound in the truth, it's about being able to take what the Word says and apply it to our lives. And let that fit us and let that firmly fasten us to where we can be effective in this war or this fight that we've been called to carry out. Protecting us in those places of vulnerability so that we can apply these things to our lives and to our heart and to our ministry so that we can walk together with the Lord in the power of His might and be able to do the things that He's called us to do. Not only does it talk about the posture of the victor, not only does it talk about the protecting of those things which are vulnerable, but it also talks about the proper securing of our vitals. This is the next thing now in the armor of God that He tells us. Having now, He says, what does He say there in verse 14? Having our loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness. Now it's funny when you consider this breastplate. A breastplate is protection for both sides of the body, from the neck to the navel. A breastplate is something to be worn not on the back for retreat, but on the front for advancement of the cause. This breastplate is something that we put on to protect our heart. And He talks about putting on the breastplate of righteousness. Now what's funny about righteousness, of course we talked about that some this morning. If you go into the definition of righteousness, in a broad sense, the definition of righteousness is the state of one who is being as he ought to be, the condition that is acceptable before God. In a narrower sense, it speaks of justice, or the virtue that gives each his due. Now that's something that ought to scare us to death in our own righteousness, since the Bible teaches us that our righteousness is as filthy rags. But once we've been saved, we have been we've received, if you will, the imputed righteousness of Christ. And having been given the imputed righteousness of Christ, to receive our due would be to receive what He would have us to in light of His connection or relationship with the Father. And so with that breastplate of righteousness, this is to protect our heart. This is the first piece where the girding of the loin speaks of defense. This is the first piece of the armor that speaks of offense. This speaks of engagement. You put on this breastplate of righteousness to go forward. You put on this breastplate of righteousness to engage in the fight. This speaks very plainly or very simply of a few things in our part in this fight. It speaks, first of all, of our understanding that this is a fight. That this is something that we have to do. You don't put on armor to go play in the yard. You don't put on armor to go feed your dog. You put on armor to fight. And I remember as a kid, I never was into the fighting thing. I never was mean. That wasn't my deal. But one of the things I remember people saying, I heard preachers saying all my life, was about it being a fight, about it being a war. And I remember at times hearing that thinking, I don't want to be in a fight. I don't want to be engaged in a fight. But then you live a little bit and you learn you're in a fight whether you want to engage or not. Spiritually, friend, we are in a battlefield. And you've got two choices. Roll your sleeves up and fight to victory, or you can be run over and taken by the enemy. And if those are my only two options, I guess I want to be on the side that rolls my sleeves up. I guess I want to be on the side that walks away with the posture of victory. I'd rather go out on my feet than have somebody carry me there. And so if that's the condition and that's the situation, what he's saying is, by putting on the breastplate of righteousness, is our accepting and understanding that we are engaged in a fight. And if we're going to be engaged in a fight anyway, we might as well prepare to win the fight. We might as well prepare to take the victory. And this is one of the things that as a Christian, and I know many of you, this is not just a pastor thing, but this is one thing that as a Christian, I know it's hard for us to understand, is why there are so many people in a fight, yet so few, it seems, who cares to win the fight. There are so few, it seems, who care to prepare for victory, but rather float through their life having no recollection whatsoever of what it is that they've come from and what it is that God has done. As we said this morning, to know that we've been redeemed, plucked from the hand of evil, placed in the hand of the Father, that we've been given victory in Jesus, that we can prepare ourselves to go out and not only win the fight. Listen, I don't want to go 15 rounds and win by a split decision. I want to knock that sucker out. Can I get a witness tonight? Prepare ourselves for the fight. Put on the breastplate of righteousness. It speaks to our understanding that we are in a fight, whether we like it or not. So we've got two choices. There used to be a television show that came on called Pros versus Joes. Did y'all ever watch that? There would be a professional athlete that would go up against a Joe, an average Joe, a guy that sat on the couch and ate potato skins and thought that he could have been a professional athlete had things just worked out for him better or whatever. And so they made this show just to prove to old Joe that you got to do more than eat potato skins and like football to be a football player. And they would put him out there, and I remember Randy Couture was an MMA fighter. And they had guys, one guy was a Navy SEAL that was trained in hand-to-hand combat. And he never could, I'm talking about get the bat off of his shoulder in the ring with Randy Couture. Every time they said go, Couture would slam him to the ground. They wouldn't try to hurt each other. He'd get him down and hold him there till they stopped. Every time. He tapped out everybody. And this was these pros that were versus the Joes were all retired, hurt, injured athletes that couldn't even compete on a professional level anymore. But they were so much better than the average Joes. Why is that? Because of a lifetime of preparation. I saw a video yesterday where Chris Paul, the point guard for the Los Angeles Clippers, was at a camp with Michael Jordan, challenged Michael Jordan to a shooting contest, and Michael Jordan in his 50s did not miss one single shot. Why is that? Because he's got the touch. Why does he have the touch? Because he shot 10,000 basketballs a day for his whole life. That's how you get good. If we want to be good at this, it's going to take more. See, here's my problem with where we are with faith now. Faith seems to be this blind optimism that everything's going to be all right and everything's going to be good, and we're just going to hide behind the Lord and go out and do good. And that's fine. We can hide behind the Lord. He's the one that gave us this breastplate. But if we're going to really go out and do battle and understand our engagement, it's about more than us just pouting and whining and asking God to do it for us. It's about us recognizing that God's given us everything that's necessary for us to go out and win victory, and we've got to do our part. Now, do you want to win a 3-on-3 game in the backyard, or do you want to go win a championship? Because this could be the difference. Preparation. Understanding that we're in a fight. Understanding that we're in a fight. What David and them are doing tonight is having a fellowship for the youth to strengthen their bond and grow them. What the kids are doing this week when they go to camp is to draw them closer to God. There will be a lot of fun to be had, but the emphasis is to get them to the Word and to get them in an attitude of togetherness and unity and community and build together, strength to strength, so that we can fight this fight. The breastplate of righteousness and our understanding of needing the breastplate of righteousness is for us to be shaken and be convinced tonight that we are in a fight. This is a fight that we're in, and we only have two options. We can win the fight or we can lose the fight. And again, church, if that's our only option, why not take what God's given us to win it and win it? This is our understanding that we are in a fight. This is our undertaking of this fight, knowing our inability. This is our going into this fight knowing right well that in and of ourselves we cannot win. Is that not the saddest commentary in all the world? But we recognize tonight that whatsoever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith. That we have the ability tonight to gird our loins about with truth and to put on the breastplate of righteousness and march on to victory. As God's called us to do this fight and do what God's been doing. Victory, victory, victory. Put on this breastplate of righteousness. Our understanding that this is a fight. Our undertaking of this fight, knowing our inability. And the last thing tonight is our unbelievable Father, who has given us everything that we need to be ready. Amen. This breastplate of righteousness is for us to put on and to be on the offense to go forward, to advance the cause of Christ. It's amazing tonight when you really come to grips with the reality of how brief life is and how short of a window of time you have to make an impact on anybody. Whether it be our children, whether it be our community, whether it be the next generation. I spoke with a preacher, I ate lunch with him not long ago, and he's undertaken writing a set of commentaries. He's got several other guys involved in it, but it's his baby, and he's working. And he said, it's funny. He said, you're doing what you do now, but when you get my age, you'll realize that you want to leave more than what you were able to accomplish just in your life. You'd like to be able to have an impact on people that you perhaps will never meet. And it was amazing to hear his heart and to hear his burden about that. When you realize just how brief this window is and how small of an opportunity we have to make a difference, it sure makes you want to turn up the burns, doesn't it? It makes you really want to do as much as you can do. I remember my daddy, I've heard folks talk about, my daddy's 77 years old. He can talk as much about when he was in the Navy and when he played high school football as anybody that ever lived. 77 years old. I guess none of the stuff that me and my brother did for him made any difference because every time he's happy, he goes back to that. But I realize kind of now why that is. Because he feels like it was just yesterday that he was playing high school football and in the Navy. It's amazing how fast life goes and how brief life is and how fast these things go. And I know I have no conception whatsoever of what so many of you already know. But I know the fastest 4 years of my life has been watching my two kids just come along and grow. And when we didn't think they would ever crawl, they crawled. When we didn't think they'd ever crawl, they walked. We didn't think they'd ever talk. Now they're carrying on conversations. It's like exactly what they said. And they were right. When they're little, you want them to get up and talk. And when they get where they can do that, you want them to sit down and shut up. Right? Boy, Jake especially is to the stage now where all we do is answer questions. Why, what, when, where, how? Why, what, when, where, how? And what's funny is when you answer the question and he didn't even listen to your answer. And of course, I like to go into great detail. Really make him run. We were at the table. We were at the table today eating lunch. And we were just talking. He was just in one of them moods where he was talking good. And so we asked him, what are you going to be when you grow up? He said, I'm going to be big and strong. All right? He said, like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you think you want to do? He said, well, I want to take my leaves and let my leaves go down and cut them on my lawnmower and let the fire blow out the back of my lawnmower. And I want my lawnmower to be real fast. And I don't want the cops to catch me, so I'm going to be real fast because I don't want the cops to catch me and shoot me. Good answer. And then we said something else about what are you going to do when you get big? He said, it'll be big and strong like Daddy, because right now they don't know that this is not the way you're supposed to look. And he said, I'll be big and strong like Daddy. I said, let's set a ceiling at about 225 for you. You get about 225. Let's cut it off. That'll be a good big and strong, you know. And he said, well, I said, what are you going to do when you get big? He said, well, I'm going to get big and strong, and I'm going to wear your underwear. I said, okay, well, we'll be sure to save you a pair. And he said, yeah, but you better clean them first. It's amazing that mind and how it absorbs and how we've got this one window, this one chance. And it's hard to believe that in 4 years, all the aspiration that I've driven into that kid is to grow up and wear my drawers one day. So we've all got work to do, wouldn't you agree? Putting on this breastplate of righteousness is for us to understand that we're in a fight. And that if we're going to win this fight, it's going to take effort. And if we're going to win this fight, it's going to take preparation. And it's going to take us, as he said, to gird our loins about the truth. And to build on the foundation, on the core, on the centrality of our belief is based on truth. And above that, this breastplate of righteousness to protect our heart and our most vital areas as we go forward into battle to do what God has called us to do and be what God has called us to be. This is the armor of God. You think about all the different things. I've recently started running. Okay? I've taken up running. You can laugh if you want to. I know you need to get it out of your system. Lost 4 pounds in a week. So, there you go. So now I'm trying to figure out shoes, because it turns out when you're really heavy and you run, your feet don't like it. So I'm trying to find out what are the best kind of shoes to wear to run. And I'm looking, and there's brands of shoes that I didn't know existed. And so I don't know what shoes to get. I'm just going crazy trying to figure this all out. And it's funny when you go, do you get the Nike, do you get the Under Armour, do you get the Adidas, the Brooks, the this, the that, there's something else. There's one called a Hoka One One. Yeah, it's like running on pillars. And so you look at all of these shoes and you can't figure out what to do. It's the same thing if you go to buy a gun. You don't know. Some people like Remington, Winchester, Mossberg, all of this thing, Browning. I mean, there's all these different kind of things. I've been in all of these different discussions with guys, you know, for self-defense weapons, about a pistol or something like that. Some like a 9mm, a 40 caliber, a 357, a 45. I mean, there's so many arguments, so many discussions. Isn't it nice, though, in the whole realm of battle, when you're going to consider that you're in a fight either way, that there's something called the armor of God? Doesn't that kind of knock everything else out of the way? Isn't it funny if you think about all the different choices that we have to make? I can do this to protect myself. I can invest in the stock market. I can do this. I can do that. I can do that. I can do this. Or I can put on the armor of God. Well, that's kind of like the ding ding moment, right? The light comes on. There's all these different choices, all these different brands, but then there's this one little bitty thing that Paul throws out and says, oh yeah, if you were looking for something, here's this. The armor of God. Gird our loins with truth. Put on the breastplate of righteousness so that we can engage in this fight. We're going to open the altar and give you an invitation. If you're here tonight, you need to come to this altar. Obviously, you're always invited. One of the hard things for you sometimes as a preacher or speaker, especially in this setting, is so many times you give these invitations and you almost feel like you say the same thing over and over. And I want that to take away from the sincerity. Because as fresh and real and new as it can be, this altar is wide open for you tonight, whatever you're needing. If you're here and you need to be saved, you can be saved right here. If you're here tonight and there's something else you need to get settled, you can come get it settled. Don't pass an opportunity if God's dealing with your heart. Just because it's something that we do so often, don't take that for granted. This is your invitation. Having heard what we've heard, seen what we've seen, experienced what we've experienced this day, this service, this is your opportunity to respond. And if that response yields you coming to the altar and praying and asking God to do something for you, I want you to know that you're welcome to do that. Stand with me if you will. Father, thank you for the word tonight. Bless